YouTube, Mellow, it's Matt here. We're here for a bit of a different video today, and we're going to have a discussion over the new Heal Guardians that came out in both Set 5 and Festival Collection on the Japanese side and are closely approaching us. So what I'm going to discuss is actually more what's behind the Heal Guardians and how much they actually affect the meta as a whole. Because I am constantly seeing do I need to pick this heal up? Do I not need to pick this heal up? So breaking it down, discussing it with all the decks up to Festival Collection on the English side, just to show you what's worth picking up, what's not. I am, however, not going to be covering Token Rambu. A, I don't know enough about it, and B, I haven't seen many people actually playing it. I am going to cover everything else though, from sets 1 to 5, Lyrical 1 and 2. I am covering the Lyrical Melody. I'm also covering Festival Collection as well, because that is going to be a relevant part of the meta. So starting off, we are going to quickly discuss the actual heals themselves. So as I said earlier, we got two different versions of these heals. We got one in Booster Set 5, Triumphant Return of the Brave Heroes. And these heals were more designated towards being plus 15k shield if your opponent's unit restood and attacked for a second time. So they are all 10k base, but then gain 15k to put them to 25k shields, which is a really strong part of the cards. And these are working on restanding rear guards, vanguards, doesn't matter how they restand. They will be gaining that shield if it's the second battle of that unit. The other heals are the ones that came out in Festival Collection, which just released at Daivangasai on the Japanese side. Now these heals are the same as the other ones. They gain 10k, start off 10k base, and they gain 15k to put them to 25k. But the other difference is these ones gain the 15k shield if your opponent has received a critical trigger from outside the effect of a drove check trigger. I do want to reiterate the critical increase of the Dark States over trigger does count in this, because it is not the effect of a trigger at that point. It is a condition that the over trigger sets, but it is not treated as a trigger effect. So this would be looking at inherent crits gained from skills, orders, and obviously Dark States over trigger. Now we've done a bit quick coverage of what the heals actually do. Let's swap over to the tier generator, and I can show you what decks are affected, what decks aren't, and we'll break each deck down. And we're back. I do apologise for change of t-shirts. The reason behind that is for the fact of when I was recording yesterday, the footage actually corrupted, so I did need to redo it. So as you can see from the grid here, we have got going higher and lower, depends on how affected they are by the critical heals, and going right to left is dependent on how much they are actually affected by the restanding heal triggers. So all the clans are imported in. You won't see them on screen because obviously it's cropped off, but I've got everything here in alphabetical order. So let's get started, and the first one up is Celestial. Celestial is, when she's in White Wings, gains 5k in a crit, which is instantly affected by the crit heals. But on top of that, you've also got the fact that you've got a Rimwell, which on place counterblast 1, and for every 3 of your odd units, you get to give 5k in a crit to something else. So very much crit pressure, crit pressure, crit pressure. But her multi-attack is actually back row attacking in the form of the Black Wings instead of restanding rear guards, so it is unaffected by the restanding heals. So slots very much up into that corner there. Next one up on the list is Baron Magnus. Now Baron Magnus is also 10k in a crit on attack when you've got 10 or more in soul, but instead of actually restanding your rear guards, he eats them all up and spits 2 more back out. Manipulating the soul as per the Dark States playstyle. So very much the same situation, affected by crit heals but not by the restands. Next one up on the list is Bastion. Now, ever since its release back in its start deck, Bastion was all about, oh, I drove check a grade 3, restand a rearguard. That carried on, has constantly been a thing, and obviously Bastion Prime came out and it was check a grade 3 or greater, stand all your grade 3 rearguards. So, constantly going to be restanding. There is no additional crits to the rearguards for your effects. So he's in the complete opposite corner and slides down here. Next one up is Zorga. Zorga is all about equipping 2 arms to herself and then gaining the ability to Soul Blast to nuke your opponent's front row and gain a crit while still being offensive and defensive based on her arms. All in all, she's still a 3 attack deck, so she doesn't get affected by the restands, but obviously her crit makes her susceptible to the crit heals. Next one up is Bruce. Bruce has always been stand the rearguard, stand the rearguard, stand the rearguards, ever since his introduction. He then evolved into Unrivaled Bruce, and he still stood the rearguards, but then he stood alongside them. So obviously you're thinking at that point, well, it's just the restands, right? But that's where things change, because they also got Brian in one of the later sets, which gives a critical pressure as well. So very much affected by both. Next one up is Clarissa. Now, Clarissa is in the situation of she gains her powers based on the order aimed to be the strongest idol, which then gives her the ability to attack 3 of your opponent's circles with the units on them. So, mass multi-attack is more coming from herself, and then the rearguard attack on top of it. So, by that logic, nothing affects her. Until you look at her rearguards specifically and see Catalin restands based on whether your Vanguard hit an opponent's unit. So obviously you can play around this by just not swinging in with Catalin until after the Vanguard, but you do still come under the slightly affected by them. So I'm going to put her right on the line here because she can be affected, but can also play around it. Next one up is Dragonic Overlord, the the end. Dragonic Overlord, the end, is the exact same as all of his other reiterations. Restand, restand, restand. He isn't any different in the form of when he attacks the Vanguard, end of the battle, you can counterblast 2, ditch 2, restand him, and get drive -1. Obviously, the drive -1 is then counteracted by having a Dragonic Overlord in Soul, but it's constant Vanguard restands, same as he always has been. No crit pressure gained, so he joins Bastion down the bottom. Next up is Eugene, everyone's favourite desert gunner. Now, Eugene's playstyle is all about retiring your opponent's rearguards by resting your rearguards as costs, and then, obviously, on top of that, you're then calling new cards out based on your opponent's empty rearguard circles, and the ones you don't call go to Soul to and start refunding more costs again. But the restands do kick in before your battle phase. You actually start the attacking, but because they're not actual multi-attack restands, he is immune to the restand heals. Criticals, he does have Tri-Bash, but Tri-Bash is long been taken out of the deck, and he is very much unaffected by either of the heal triggers. Next one up is Eva, who is one of the Crowcross Epic Ridelines from the new set 5. Now, her skill is utilising research orders in your order zone to look at the top cards of your deck, add one to hand, and stack the rest on the bottom. And then, when she attacks, she can call Overlord from deck, who gains power and critical based on the number of research orders in your order zone. So, very much critical heavy, but he's unaffected by the restand as it's a superior calling multi-attack rather than straight up restanding. Next one up is Fortier Rosa. Now, Fortier Rosa is the very much definition of a hit and run deck, because you swing in with your rear guards, they tag back into deck, you then swing with your Vanguard, drive check some more ghosts, call them back out to rear guard again, swing in with the new rear guards, and they tag back out into deck again. So, multi-attack without restands, no crits gained, She's sitting down there with Eugene. Next one up is Flagberg. Now, Flagberg's gained a fair bit of popularity as of late on the NA side, even managing to get a couple of tops. And honestly, it's very understandable as to why. You've got Inlet Pulse as a very solid rearguard. You're a 5 attack deck from multiple restands. You've got the guard restrict, you've got retire, you've got draw power. And on top of all that, you've got the ability to utilise orders in there as well. Main one being Nectar of Sensationalism for 15k and a crit on a rearguard. So you've got constant restands, which are part of the deck, so you're heavily affected by the restand heals. You do obviously become affected by the crit heals due to good old topic name, Nectar of Sensationalism, but you can play without Nectar, so it definitely goes all the way to being affected, but it sits on this middle line because obviously you can play without the crit heals. Next one up, well, we've had Dragonic Overlord, so we might also have Dragonic Overlord, the female version, in the forms of Fortier. Now, Fortier is very much like Dragonic Overlord of Restand in the Vanguard, but she needs a full field of friends to do so. So, a bit more restrictive than Dragonic Overlord, but is still the same playstyle. Lyrical does have more generic plussing than what Dragonic Overlord has to make up for the fact of obviously her needing the full field. So, again, very much restand heal affected, not affected by the crits. Next two up I'm going to put together, which is Brave equals Zorga and Mysterious Range Spiritualist Zorga. Now, these are... Grave equals Zorga is the new iteration of base Zorga that came out in Festival Collection this past weekend in Daivangasai. Both of them utilise combining orders together to get 2 orders in a turn. Now, Grave equals Zorga is based very heavily around consistent Alchemagic, because you're Soul Blasting one, ditching one to add an order back to hand, and then being able to perform Alchemagic. Whereas Mysterious Range Spiritualist Zorga is more on the ground blue side of resurrecting your units from the drop zone back to the field, and then having the Alchemagic ability as a separate one. So both of them are very much combat orientated, and no restand for them at all. They're literally a 3 attack deck, but they do have the crit pressure both behind good old roaming Prison Dragon. So both of them sit side by side right up here. Next one up on the list is Gravidia. Now, Gravidia is the definition of how many crits would you like. She gains a crit from her skill. You've got the Burrito that gains a crit for every crit. If you've retired 3 rear guards this turn, it's crit, 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 crit. There is only 3 attacks to the deck, but there is so much pressure behind Gravidia, she does not need that multi-attack. So she does very much slide straight up into this section here. Next one up is Greedon. Now, Greedon is the last one of the set 3 ride lines after obviously Flagberg and Gravidia. Came out same sort of time, was slightly strong to begin with, but obviously it has died down a bit as hasn't had the best of support as of lately. Greedon is all about eating your own rear guards to then restand your Vanguard for multiple Vanguard swings. But the rear guards need to be stood rear guards, so you do only get the basics of 2 to 3 attacks a turn. But they're Vanguard swings and you don't lose draft checks off any of them, so you do gain advantage in that extent. They have gained a new rearguard in Festival Collection, which does gain a critical, but obviously with it being so close to release still, it is still undetermined whether that card will actually make the lists or not. So for now, I am actually not going to class it in the lists. So obviously, again, he is very much affected by the restands, but as of this point in time, does not use criticals. Next one up is Herminia. Now, Herminia is all about using up all your soul and all your counter blasts to then gain her access to her skill to restand a rearguard end of her battle, and then reduce their the next counterblast cost you would pay that turn by 1. So obviously you combine this with all of her powerful support lines to drain your soul, and then spam counterblasts with multiple skills to then gain the ability to restand rearguards. So obviously restands are very much a thing. The other thing she does gain, which some of the Japanese lists have been using alongside myself, because I've been testing this version of Herminia, is utilising the wings package in the forms of Elkiel and a Rimwell. So you can Elkiel when you ride Herminia on a Herminia, to then make yourself into the White Wings mode, and then a Rimwell can then place down, give your restanding rearguards crit pressure. It is a very piece reliant, but it is a version that is very much really strong. So it does sit on this line because you can play without it, without putting the crits on the restanding rearguards, but it is there as an option. Next one up on the list is Hexaore. Now Hexaore is all about looking into the future, checking the top cards of your deck and stacking them as how you want. So then you can then stack your triggers and then restand your rearguards based on said triggers that appear. So very much a restand deck, but there is no actual crit pressure gain from the deck, because ability to stack the triggers that would then cause your rearguards to stand, whilst those rearguards have crits, would be a bit too strong. So she does sit very much down here. Next one up on the list is Kylie. So Kylie came out as the Lyrical Trial deck, and was all the Bermuda playstyle of bouncing your rearguards, calling them back down again, multi-attacks with bouncing. Aces X Live Kyrie then evolved that even further by on attack bounce call straight away instead of having a gap in between the calls. So yeah, again, it's keeping up the good old bouncing calling Bermuda playstyle, multi-attack that way, no crit pressure as of yet, but obviously you can utilize the ability of a Rimwell Elkiel package into Kyrie, but very much not seen. So she's joining the bottom crew of being unaffected. Next one up on the list is Chaos. Chaos is another one of the Craycross Epic Ride lines. And Chaos is all about gaining skills based on the number of unique card names you have in your soul. So if you've got 8 unique card names, he'll give 10,000 to one of your rearguards on attack. And if you've got 13 different names, he will give all of your rearguards 10,000 power. Where his multi-attack comes in though, however, is due to the effects of Makani, his glitter support card. And Makani is when your Chaos Vanguard attacks, he'll then restand, but then go into Soul at end of turn. So, utilising it that way, you get your 5 attacks in via restands. So, he very much joins this crew down here. Next one up on the list is Laurenarol. And Laurenarol was one of the very strong meta decks coming out of Lyrical. She had the crit gaining due to Mana Red Runway. She had mass power and Sentinel Restrict because of 6-hour Fractal, which then also restood rearguards on top. So no matter what, you are going to be gaining crits. You are going to be restanding rearguards. So you are very much affected by both of the heal triggers. Next one up is Magnolia. Now Magnolia didn't start off as one of the strongest decks, but over time it developed and got really strong thanks to the powers of Magnolia Elder, Inlet Pulse Dragon, and also Panthro, all from set 4, and is now one of the very strong meta contenders. It is all about multi-attacking, but more multi-attacking from the back row. Magnolia base form lets you attack when end of the battle it attacked, let one of your units attack from the back row. If you Persona Road, let 3 attack from the back row. And Magnolia Elder just lets all of your units attack from the back row. So, very much high pressure, but no crits, no restands, so unaffected by all the new heals. Next one up is Majesty Lord Blaster. Now, Majesty Lord Blaster is the next one of the Encounter Ride lines. He came out brand new with set 5, and looking very strong out the gate because he kept his old playstyle of sucking in Blaster Blades, Blaster Darks to then gain criticals. So very much critical heavy playstyle. He does retire now as well on top of that in the V format instead of power gaining, but there is very much critical gains happening. So he does sit up in that top corner. Next one on the list is Nirvana. Now Nirvana started out as 3 attacks, resurrecting stuff, the trick stars from the drop zone, and then just overdressing. So you got the toolbox playstyle, which is a very nice one, which then obviously developed into multi-attack with set 2 due to the forms of Virina Urga, and then gained crit pressure in the forms of Virina Expector in set 3, and then gained the restanding rearguard in set 4 in the form of Virina Esperadia. But because of this toolbox that Nirvana has, you can play around the heals by just not using the units that are weak to the heals that you're seeing. So if you're seeing all the crit heals from your opponent, you know to not play Expector. If you're seeing the restand heals, you'll know not to play Esperadia. So Virina's in the weird spot of sitting smack bang in the centre of the graph, because it can be affected by all the heals, but at the same time can dodge the heals by playing around them. So very nice mechanic is the way to look at it. Next one up is another pair being done at the same time, and that's Orphis Regis and Orphis from set 1 and Festival Collection. So Orphis Regis is the Festival Collection ride line, the second new one alongside Zorga, and Orphis is all about mid-battle phase calling more tokens, whereas obviously the base Orphis was all about calling all tokens in your main phase and then utilising from costs there. So obviously both of them don't have multi-attacks directly tied to them, in the forms of restands that is, but it does come out more in the form of their support grade 2 from set 3, which end the battle at attack, sacrifice 3 tokens, restand this unit. So obviously base Orphis can get 2 swings out of it, but the new Orphis Regis, however, because of this multi-attack, mid-battle phase calling tokens, can actually get that unit to restand twice. So both of them are very much hindered by the restanding heals, because that is their main attacker on the rearguard circle. So those heals do slow them down a fair bit. Next one up is the last of the encounter ride lines in Phantom Blaster Overlord. Now Phantom Blaster Overlord is when he attacks, retire to your rear guards, call a Blaster Dark from drop or soul, and both him and that get power. Then you've got the ability of, if you've got Phantom Blaster Dragon in your soul, he then gains power and a critical on top of that. So very much similar to the V form of Phantom Blaster Overlord. But this one's actually being, obviously in overdress format, people are actually using this as the grade 3 in the ride line instead of the grade 3 in the main deck and having Phantom Blaster Dragon in the ride line. Reason for this is because most of them are adapting to using D series Skull Witch Nemain to slide the Phantom Blaster Dragon from hand into soul where needed. Because of that, you can make yourself unaffected by the crit heals. So Phantom Blaster Dragon does very much sit on this line over here, because he's unaffected by the crit heals, unaffected by the restands, but can go either way in terms of whether he'll have the crit or won't have the crit. Next one up is Roa. Now Roa is all about the early aggro token spam due to his ride line, and then utilising those tokens in the mid to late game for either defensive skills or his own, or with utilising it to sacrifice off for the Momoka token created by Radliana. So yes, you've got the multi-attack, but again it's Momoka attacking from the back row multi-attack instead of restanding multi-attack. There's no crits gain because it is a defensive style deck in the late game or an early aggro in the early game. So unaffected by both forms of the heals. Next one up is Seraph Snow. Now, Seraph Snow started off as being the control deck of the format because you were taking away your opponent's units and forcing them to pay costs to gain them back. Didn't start off amazingly for the fact of people were just going, okay, you can keep my stuff, I'll just call new cards down, because there was no downside to leaving stuff in your opponent's prison. It then got to the point of we now was set 4, having Seraph Pure Light, who, when she now reaches 10 cards in the prison, gives your entire front row a crit. So obviously, crit heals do then become very much a nice counter to Seraph Pure Light. But Seraph Pure Light player can play around this though by controlling how much they actually spam putting your opponent's units into the prison. So it does sit alongside Phantom Blaster Dragon, Overlord even, because you can mitigate having the crits on the rear guards by not going up to 10 in the prison. Next one up is Tamiura. Now, Tamiura's got the skill of when she attacks, she calls 2 units out of your soul. It's either going to be the Rirumi-Rarumi pair, or you call 1 out. More than likely not, it's going to be the Darful Doll twins, the glitter support. For the sheer fact of the Darful Dolls have the skill of when they're on the Guardian, retire from the Guardian Circle, they then move to Soul. So this is very much akin to Pale Moon and the Magia Dolls playstyle from Harry. So you're calling stuff out on attack, intercepting with it to block, and then moving back into Soul to then call it back out again next turn. All in all, unaffected by the crit heals, unaffected by the restand heals, you're sitting down the bottom. Next one up on the list is the last of the Craycross Epic lines in Thegria. Now this is obviously going to be both forms of Thegria I'm talking about here because you run both in the same deck. And both of them are very restand heavy as per the usual with the Cat Sanctuary decks. You've got the light form of Thegria, which is restanding a rear guard at the end of the battle she attacks. And then you've got Shadow Thegria, which restands herself at the end of the battle as she attacks. So both of them are restanding, applying lots of pressure, so they do get affected by the restand heals. Then last one up on the list is Wallister. Now Wallister's got the good old skill of mass deck thinning and then using her skill to utilise the precious gems within her soul to then block off your opponent's intercepting and just go hard aggro with the deck. This did get a very nice improvement in the forms of Ophelie in set 2, who is a restanding rearguard for the deck by returning the unit behind your Vanguard to the bottom of your deck. Because of this, you obviously do become affected by the restand heals. Because Wallister has always been the early aggro rush deck, you can still play without Ophelie and be unaffected by the heals overall. So you do very much slide into the same category as Clarissa and sit on the line. So that is all the lines. This is what we have ended up with here. Obviously, this is all going to be where you want to aim for going meta dependency. So obviously, if we start seeing the meta being pure Zorga, Gravidia, Magnus, you want to be using the crit heals in your decks. Whereas obviously, if it goes the other way and it's Bastion, Orphis, Thegria, you then want to go for the restanding heals in your deck. And obviously, the obvious likewise, if the meta becomes Kylie and Magnolia, like the current JP meta is very heavily with those two at the moment, you'd be wanting to stick to your base heals. But obviously, you can adjust accordingly. It's worthwhile grabbing a playset of all the heals just so you can then interchange as and when needed. But that is going to be it for this video. If you haven't done so already, please do like, comment, subscribe. It very much does help the channel. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye bye!